Ours has been a century of blood and terror. And yet of all the convulsions of our time, the one we heeded least was the revolution in China, bloodiest and most terrible of all. An entire civilization blown apart. There are 700 million Chinese today, 1/4 of the human race, and they are taught to hate. Their growing power is the world's greatest threat to peace and life. 50 years of torment bred madness. To deal with madness, we must understand its roots, see China's revolution through the eyes of those who were there. For 7 pivotal years, author-historian Theodore White lived in China, knew the men who now control her destiny. With him, we shall look back at a century of tragedy. For 18 years, we of the West have been excluded from China. We can pace along this barbed wire border at Hong Kong and try to squint inside or strain out sounds, but all we hear is echo of disaster, past and present. When we ask why, there is no other book of answers but the history of this century. For both of us, Chinese and Westerners, have shared the blunders that transformed our greatest friend in Asia into our greatest enemy. Theodore H. White recalls,
"Those of us who lived in China in the crisis decade remember it all so differently. So close they were in friendship to us, fingertip close. And now their fists are balled in anger. They were looking for some entry into the modern world, and nothing in their ancient culture could give them any guide to the turbulence they found. Nor could we help them. It was a quest, a 50-year search for some new kind of government, some new form of order. And in the end, they moved from tyranny to tyranny, from the tyranny of Confucius and the Manchu emperors to the tyranny of communism and Mao. And in between, we have only fitful glimpses of what happened, snatches of photography so tantalizingly incomplete to explain what happened. It all began in mystery and goes on today in mystery."
For 2,000 years, we tried to read this Chinese mystery, but read it from a book of myths, entrancing age-old myths, brought back by travelers from beyond the mountain walls of Asia, where they had found a land of changeless wonders. A strange serenity of spirit graced its hills with beauties. Bridges arched across the rivers as much to soothe the eye as help the wayfarer. The silent shriek of violence in art might catch attention, but that was echo of an anger we did not fathom. The same mythical serenity rested on all the fields of this land of peasants, a biblical rhythm carrying men from sowing to harvest, from birth to death, in apparent contentment. The old myth held that China had solved the great secret of government. Confucius, half god, half sage, had taught order and duty. These make government. Each man fixed in place, bound in obedience to those above, as those above were bound in obedience to the will of heaven. The emperor they called the son of heaven, Tzu-hsi, because only he interpreted the will of heaven in his land. For 1,500 miles ran the Great Wall, sealing in a nation so proud It knew itself only as Zhongguo, the Central Kingdom. All other men, barbarians. For 2,000 years, behind this wall, proud China knew herself invulnerable. For centuries, China let barbarian Westerners dock only at Canton to buy her precious silks, her porcelain, her tea. To pay for these, Englishmen introduced opium from India. By 1830, this trade was booming. China protested, burned the opium, and the bark of English warships as war broke out in 1839 first shattered myths of Chinese power. The result, defeat, disaster. Aboard a British warship in 1842 came humiliation, with China forced by treaty to yield Hong Kong outright and open 4 more coastal cities to British merchants and their opium. Where Britain led, others followed. Rival powers raced each other to carve proud China as spoils. English, French, Americans, Germans, Russians demanded privileges, colonies, concessions. In 60 years had won the right to govern, try, punish Chinese in their own land. In China's capital, Peking, where from these ancient altars countless emperors had sought the mandate of heaven, the myth of heavenly rule persisted still. But deep within the palaces where China's Manchu emperors reigned, by 1900, that myth too was dead. For here ruled China's evil spirit, the Empress Dowager Tzu-hsi, a Manchu concubine, bedmate to an emperor for whom she had produced an heir. A woman with a gift of malice, said to have poisoned her own son upon his throne, installed her infant nephew as emperor, killed his mother, had then imprisoned him in 1898. An ignorant woman, but unchallenged ruler of the empire. Her court, a whispering of ladies-in-waiting and eunuch favorites. Chief among them, eunuch Li Lianying, as depraved as she. When told China needed ships to fight the foreigners, they used naval appropriations to build a marble pleasure boat in a nearby lake. Only one conviction bound her to her people, hatred of the contemptuous foreigner who tramped her land. 1,000 villages deep in China mirrored her primitive hatred of the foreign devil. Moreover, their passions had found flag and leaders. As a secret brotherhood, the Boxers began to flourish. Kill the white man, burn his mission, said the Boxers, claiming magic charms could make their bodies impervious to Western bullets. With the Empress' consent, in early 1900, they began to kill. One of America's great novelists, then a missionary child, was at the time in China. Miss Pearl Buck recalls,
the Empress Dowager had issued an edict that all white people were to be killed, and many had been killed, especially in the north, in Shandong, where men, women, and children, missionaries and business people too, had been killed. But we were so fortunate because we lived in the province of Jiangsu, and we had a very good viceroy. He was an intelligent man, and he knew that it was folly for the old empress to think that she could gain anything by killing the missionaries and the business people, because there would be terrible retribution. And so he was so courageous as to insert a negative, a no, a not, into the imperial edict, so that it read, we were not to be killed. And that's what saved our lives.
Here at Peking, within these massive walls, for almost 2 months, 3,000 foreigners and Christian converts gathered under siege to fight for life. Their sandbagged embassies a bastion against Boxer fanatics. From around the world, navies rushed troops to raise the siege. Britons, Americans, Russians, French, Germans, Japanese raced with field guns and modern rifles, whose bullets no Boxer magic could resist. Victory was swift, punishment ruthless. North to south, foreign force patrolled the country. Japanese soldiers began to explore China's wealth and covet more. In the shadow of Peking's mighty ramparts, American soldiers tasted war on Asia's mainland for the first time and frolicked, China forever humbled. Foreign diplomats and generals debated China's fate. This land of endless villages, crowding each other against the skyline, was it really a nation or only a geographical expression? These peasants, was their recent outburst of passion a passing madness or something deeper? Their government smashed, still they toiled as they had for centuries in the three great river valleys falling from the heights of Central Asia to shape their country. In the north, Manchuria and the valley of the Yellow River cradled one kind of Chinese for whom Peking, the Manchu capital, was their center. Here, dry northern wheatlands rolled over an unknown treasure store of minerals which Russia and Japan both sought. In the center, the valley of the mighty Yangtze with its key cities, Shanghai, Nanking, Hankow, Chongqing,